Hello and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today we're talking about 3 ways to say no, and this video is for those of you who struggle with people pleasing and you have a hard time saying no. If you don't struggle with people pleasing and you have an easy time saying no, then this video is not for you. I'm Cassandra Mack, founder of StrategiesForEmpoweredLiving.com and CassandраMackMinistries.com. For more information about our ministry, my company, books, inspirational merch, or one-to-one coaching services, you'll see my link tree in the video description box where you can go to the other links. And so let's dive right in. Again, this video is for those who struggle with saying no. So I want to start with the scripture that comes from Matthew 5 verse 37, so that you understand that having boundaries is biblical. There is nothing ungodly about having boundaries and saying no. And so Matthew chapter 5 verse 37 says, simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything more comes from the evil one. And so the scripture makes it really plain. Like, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Be clear about what it is you want to say yes to and what it is you want to say no to. And the thing is, every time you say yes indiscriminately without thinking it through, you are inadvertently saying no to something else. And so if you say yes, for example, to loaning someone a large sum of money that you cannot afford to lose, you are saying yes to the possibility that you might not get that money back, and you may run a deficit with a bill that you need to pay. Every time you say yes to allowing a person to walk all over you and speak to you in a way that is belittling, right? When you say yes to that, you're saying no to your self-respect. And so whenever we say yes without thinking about what we're saying yes to, right, we're also saying no to something else. And it's important to keep that in mind. And so the scripture says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything more than these comes from the evil one. And so that sounds like a really strong statement, and it is a strong statement, because the scriptures want us to know that when we waver and we say yes out of pressure, we say yes out of being manipulated, we say yes out of fear of what the person will think, out of fear of the person being angry with us, and especially if this is a person who likes to manipulate other people's emotions, right? That is coming from the evil one. That is not coming from God, right? And so what happens is, over time, when we keep saying yes to things that drain us, to things that drain our self-worth, drain our confidence, drain our pockets, drain our resources, over time, the inclination is to feel resentment. And resentment doesn't come from God, so where does resentment come from? And so in order to minimize being resentful to the things that you say yes to, it would be better to be prayerful about it, to think it through. And so there's a scripture that comes before Matthew 5:36, which also kind of cements it. And so Matthew 5:36 says, nor should you swear by your head, for you cannot make a single hair white or black. And so when we swear by our heads, so to speak, it is making a promise that we don't even know if we could keep. And if you've ever been in the situation where you said yes to something that once you follow through on the yes, so you tried to follow through on the yes, you realize, wow, I didn't think through the time commitment. I can't realistically do this. And now you got to go back and tell the person no. Or I didn't think about how this would drain my resources, and I have to pay my rent or my mortgage next month, or the kids need braces, and you can fill in the blanks. And so now that realistically, I really can't afford to lose this money. And so I swore by my head, I made a promise, so to speak, that I may not be able to deliver on. And so it's important to understand this, because, you have priorities. There are things that you need to do. And even Jesus had boundaries. And I'm going to show it to you in the scriptures in a moment. And then I'm going to give you 3 ways that you can say no, starting from a hard no to a softer no. and you will select what works for you because you know your personality and your comfort level. I do not. And so I want to take you to the book of Mark, chapter 1, verses 35 through 38, and you're going to see that Jesus had boundaries and Jesus was intentional with his time. And so Mark chapter 1, verses 35 through 38, it says, "Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he went out," meaning Jesus, "and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. When they found him, they said to him, 'Everyone is looking for you.' But he said to them, 'Let us go to the next towns, that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth.'" So everybody's looking for Jesus. Jesus goes to a solitary place early before daylight to pray. He goes off to have his me time and, pray. And Simon Peter and the people that were with Simon Peter, they're searching for Jesus because everybody's looking for Jesus. Everybody is pulling at Jesus, right? And when they found him, they let Jesus know, everybody's looking for you. But look at Jesus's response in verse 38. Jesus does not say, okay, well, I'm going to come because everybody has a need or everybody's looking for me. No, what he says to them in verse 38 is, let us go to the next town. So he was very clear. Now he realized that there were people that had a need or wanted something, right? But he still had a purpose. He says, let us go into the next town. Read it for yourself in verse 38. "That I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth." And so he was clear that my purpose while I'm on earth, there are some things that I need to do that need to get done. And I have to leave this place to go to the next town because I got to preach there too. There are people that have needs there too. And so you may feel like everybody's pulling on you, right? When they're asking favors of you, when they're asking, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? And you can fill in what the favors are, what the requests are, right? And this is where it is key that you are intentional about your purpose. Your purpose on earth is not to be a people pleaser. Your purpose on earth is not to drain yourself to the point where you have no resources. Your purpose on earth is not to be at everybody's beck and call. That is not a sustainable way to live. And so Jesus was clear. He says, let us go into the next towns and I may preach there, because for this purpose I have come. So even though everybody was looking for him, right? Everybody was looking for Jesus. Jesus went to a solitary place. So that's like you trying to get your me time, but everybody's knocking on the door. Everybody's knocking on the bathroom door while you're trying to get your me time. And sometimes you have to set a boundary. And it doesn't mean that you don't love your loved ones, but it does mean that you need to replenish, or you need to do the thing that you are called and purposed to do on that particular day. And so it is impossible to be all things to all people. And so Jesus is modeling a very important lesson. Now, this is Jesus while he is on earth, right? And so this is key, so that we don't allow people to guilt us into believing that we have to say yes to everything. So the first thing we need to be saying yes to is God's purpose for our life. And our purpose is not to be a people pleaser. So now that we have a scriptural basis, I want to give you 3 ways that you can say no. So the first no is a no with no explanation and no descriptors. That's called a hard no. Now, you know your personality. You're going to select the type of no that works for you. So usually a no with no explanation is reserved for people that if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. Sometimes also no with no explanation can be for someone that you don't know that well and you really don't feel like you owe them further explanation. So you are going to have to gauge this, right? And so what this would sound like is, let's say if somebody says, hey, can you loan me $500 and I'll pay you back before the first of the month? And you say, no, I'm not able to do that. No, unfortunately, I can't accommodate your request. No, I'm not in the position to be able to do that. And so it is a no with no explanation, right? So you're not saying, no, I'm not able to do that because I don't trust that you will pay me back. And because this happened, no, I'm not able to do that because I got to pay this bill, this. So you're not giving an explanation about why you're saying no. You are just saying no. So it is no without an explanation, without describing your reasons for your no. And this is called a hard no. So you can add a few more words like no. It doesn't have to be no, but you can say no, unfortunately, I'm not able to do that. No, I'm not able to accommodate that request. No, I'm not in the position to be able to do that. So you're not stating the why. You're not going into the details. Well, I'm not in the position to be able to do that because I just started working and I'm saving for. So you're not getting into the details, but you have to know your personality, because sometimes, right, when you give a person a hard no, and this can be a soft no as well, they'll give you a lot of pushback. Well, why? And this is where you simply repeat your hard no. Right? So the person may say, well, why can't you loan me $500 until next month? Because unfortunately, I'm unable to accommodate your request. So you're still not giving an explanation. You're sticking with a hard no. Again, you have to know your comfort level, because some people will cave under pressure. So if you know you're the type of person that's going to cave under pressure and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel that that's rude, I can't do that. And a lot of people confuse being direct and unwavering and firm with being rude. You're not being rude and nasty. You are being firm, direct, and unwavering, and you don't owe an explanation about your money. And so that's the first type of no. But you might not be comfortable with that, right? So it really depends on your personality type. So usually a hard no works for someone who will not cave under pressure, can stand firm in their no, and doesn't struggle a lot with people pleasing. So you have to know what you're able to do. So the second type of no is no with a brief explanation that fits within your comfort level concerning how much detail you desire to give. Now, this is tricky because the more explanation that you give to someone, the more that they can counter your explanation. But it still comes back to, even if they counter your explanation, you have to remind yourself that you have the right to say no concerning your resources of time, emotional energy, whatever the thing might be, the favor, whatever it is, right? And you want to get in the habit of being prayerful before just automatically saying yes. And so I'm not saying we should never say yes. If there is a favor that somebody is asking of you, and in your heart you believe you can realistically do it, and it's something that you desire to do, something that God is leading you to do, more importantly, then of course by all means do it. But there are times that we say yes to things that do not align with our purpose, that actually pull us away from our purpose. There are times we say yes to things that will put us in a bind. And so an example would be, we'll go back to the person who asked you for $500. So they asked you for $500. They're going to pay you back. They tell you before the first of the month. And so you hesitantly give them the $500, knowing that you can't afford to lose that. You have that money set aside towards your rent, towards your mortgage, and you cannot afford to lose it. And then this person who's supposed to pay you back before the first of the month get themselves in a bind, or something happens for whatever reason, they don't pay you back. And now you got to figure out a way, how are you going to pay this rent or this mortgage minus the $500 that you do not have, because the person has not paid you back. And now they ducking you, ducking your calls, ducking seeing you. And so this gets really tricky. So no with a brief explanation. Again, this is a no that fits within your comfort level of how much detail you desire to give. And so we'll use the money because that's an easy, clear example. So they ask you, can you loan me $500? I'm going to pay you back before the first of the month. So the first no is no, I'm unable to do that. No, I can't accommodate that request. Now you're going to add a brief explanation if you're not comfortable with the hard no. So this no is, unfortunately, I'm unable to do that because rent is due and I'm pinching my pennies together, to be able to pay the rent before, by the first of the month. So that's my rent money, and I can't afford to gamble with my rent money. But here's the thing with that though. So I want you to be prepared. So the person may say to you, well, I said I'm going to pay you back before the the first of the month. So you have nothing to worry about with your rent money. yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I don't want to gamble because anything could happen. And I'm not speaking against your character, but anything could happen. Out of the goodness of your heart, you may truly intend to pay me back, but something can happen where you're in a bind that you can't help, and now we both in a bind. So I don't even want to take the chance knowing that I'm relying on this money for my rent and I don't have any cushion. But you see how the more they poke, you kind of find yourself explaining more and more. But you just have to be really clear that no matter how many ways they come at you, that the answer is still no. And so this is a brief explanation. So this may be somebody who you feel close to, right? So you're probably not going to give a brief explanation to a neighbor that you see in passing, but this might be a sibling. This might be a very close friend, but you still have to set a boundary. So usually a no with a brief explanation is for someone who you are closer to. You have a closer relationship and you just don't want them to feel like you are brushing them off. And not that a hard no is brushing them off, but if you struggle with people pleasing, you may feel that way. And so do understand that when you give the brief explanation, oftentimes the person who has the desire for the favor that they're asking of you is going to counter that. And so you need to be prepared for the counter so that you don't cave in if this is something that you realistically cannot do. You can't kind of gamble with the thing, right? Or maybe the person says, can you watch my 4 children for 2 weeks while I go on vacation? And you know that you are not a patient person and you are not the best person to babysit 4 children. And you also know that their children act up a lot because you've been around their children, and you know that you are just not the best person, that they deserve somebody more patient than you, and you are honest with that. So you may say, well, you know, I'm not really good with kids. I'm not that patient. I'm not the greatest with kids. And, you know, I don't even want to put your kids in a situation like that because I know that I'm not patient and I'm not good with kids. So you can use the example. You cannot insert the example in terms of the thing that the person is asking you to do. And then you want to get in the habit of being prayerful so that you don't automatically say yes to things. You know, take a moment, pray. Does this fit with your purpose? Is this something that you can realistically do? Right? So that's the second type of no. No with a brief explanation. And this is usually for the people that you feel close to. This might be your supervisor. Asking you, you know, can you take on this particular thing? And you just can't say no. You know, you just, well, no, unfortunately, I'm not able to do that. Well, you can, but you're going to have to gauge that. Like, will your supervisor then try to pay you back on the low by not signing off on your vacation time? Like, you have to know the dynamics of each of your relationships, right? And so with your supervisor, you may give a little bit of an explanation. Well, unfortunately, I'm not able to do that because, and then you would fill in the blanks of why you're not able to take on the project. Because at this time, I have this project, that project, and I realistically can't see how I can get it done within the time frame, being that I don't have additional help in the resources. So that's no with an explanation. So there are times where you may feel that may be a more workable way of saying no. So again, you will decide your life. The third no is no with an exception clause. And this is stuff that I actually teach when I teach negotiating. And it's something that I teach in my private one-to-one sessions. So you're getting a little bit of what I teach in some of my private one-to-one sessions. So no with an exception clause is when you say no, right? When you say no, but if you want me to say yes, then there's something that you must first say yes to in order to get me to say yes to your request. So this is no with an exception clause containing the thing that they must say yes to in order to get you to say yes to their request. So let's go back to the money. Person asks you for $500, and let's say that you are like, you know what, I'm going to lend it to them. That's the space that you're in. But you want to put some mechanisms in place. So you may say, well, I am willing to lend you the $500 based on based on this one thing. I'm going to type up a IOU letter. We're going to get it notarized. I want you to sign it. We'll sign both copies. And we're going to document that you would pay me back by such and such date. And if it's not paid back by such and such date, that, you know, this is the action that I will take. Now, people will get very upset with you. Well, why you got to do all that? Well, I don't want. But the thing is, if your intention is to pay the person back, when you say you're going to pay them back, then you should not have an issue with signing. Well, we family, I don't feel I got to sign no clause. It's that person's money and it's their choice. And you are a grown, able-bodied adult. Nobody is responsible for another grown, able-bodied adult. We're not talking about your minor kids here. So this is where you put the exception clause into place. And what happens a lot of times when you put an exception clause into place, most people will say, let me ask somebody else. It's too much of a headache to have to ask you for anything. Well, good. That's a blessing. Thank you, Lord. So this is no with an exception clause. Well, to be honest with you, I'm really not comfortable lending out, you know, that amount of money, but I will on one condition. Here's the exception. So usually I say no, but the exception is that we have to put it in writing, we have to get it notarized, and we have to have some terms. We have to have terms connected to the loan. And so you're willing to do that? Then I am willing to lend you the money, and I'll type up the paperwork, and we'll go to the notary public, and after the documents are signed, I will loan you the cash. And if you really want to be extreme, and I'm going to make a video giving you the cash and you saying that you will pay me back. So these are 3 ways that you can say no. Now, again, this is not for everybody. You will pick the strategy that works for you. But the beauty of having more than one strategy is that you don't feel like you don't have options at your disposal. So again, number 1, there's the hard no, no explanation. No, unfortunately, I'm not able to do it. No, unfortunately. Then there's the no with a brief explanation. Then there's no with a clause, right? No with an exception clause. And so I'm using loaning money, but it might be something else. It might be somebody asks you to take on a project. You know, well, in looking at everything that I have on my plate, it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to pull that off unless you assign me an assistant who can help me, unless we do blah, 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 blah. And then you can kind of like say what the terms are. Is that something you're agreeable to? Because if we're able to do it that way, then I can take this on, because then this way I can let go of this project, or I can put this project aside and we can change the deadline for 2 months from today. I mean, you're going to figure out the nuances and the details. And so these strategies can work in virtually. Nothing works in every situation. In virtually every situation, and then you will just nuance it for your specific situation. So I hope that you found this helpful. And of course, you always want to be prayerful, right? Before you just blindly say yes to something without really thinking through, can I realistically take this on? It can even be somebody asking you to go on a committee. And maybe you are on 3 committees already at your church, and you are burning the candle at both ends, and now they want you to take over some other committee. And although you enjoy, you know, volunteering, you may say, well, you know, I'm already on 3 committees and I feel like I'm burning the candle on both ends. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to join this 4th committee. So that's the hard no. Or, no, I'm not going to be able to spearhead this committee because I still have duties with the other 3 committees and I'm feeling like I'm burnt out. Or that's number 2, the no with a brief explanation. Or if you want to do no with the exception clause, usually because of how much I have on my plate, I would say no. The only way I can foresee being part of this committee is if you can find someone to take my place on the other 2 committees. So maybe you're on 3 committees and you want to let go of 2 committees to take the place of this committee. So if you can find someone to replace me for the other 2 committees, and if you can put that in place first, Then once that is in place and I'm totally resigned from those 2 committees, then I can take on something else. So they have to say yes to that to get you to say yes to their request. And if they can't say yes to that, you can't say yes to their request. It's just not feasible for you. So I hope that you found this helpful in terms of those of you who really struggle with saying no, that there are different ways to say no. There's the no with no exception, no explanation. No is very direct. No with a brief explanation for those who you are closer to and you feel like you want to give them a little bit more. Maybe this is someone that you're like, you know what, I really owe it to them to not just say no, but give them a little bit more because they were there for me when ... So I really need to let them know what's going on. Maybe you're struggling with a health challenge and you just don't have the energy to be able to do that thing, and they don't know that. And you may say, let me let them know that this is what's going on in my life, and I'm not just, not wanting to help them, but I just don't have the energy right now. Or you're going through, a hard time, whatever the situation is, and this is someone you're close to, and you're like, I have a lot of respect for them, we're close, so, let me give a little bit more. Or again, number 3, I'm willing to say yes under this condition that you say yes to this. And so that's negotiation. When you're negotiating, right? Even when you're negotiating for a raise, when you're negotiating for different things at your job, right? When you're negotiating a win-win situation, it's called a win-win situation, means that we both walk away with something we want. But if you are the only one who is walking away with what you want, then it's a win-lose. So if we're both walking away with something we want, that's a win-win. And again, this is something that I teach in some of my seminars as well as my private coaching, but you got a snippet of it today. So I hope you found this helpful. A couple of things I want to let you know about. So for those of you who came to our Wednesday wellness call yesterday, where we talked about how to stay seated in heavenly places when all hell is breaking loose, how did you enjoy our Wednesday wellness call? It's a Wednesday wellness call that happens for those who are members of the Cassandra Mack YouTube channel at the 2nd tier or higher. So do let me know how you're enjoying our bi-weekly Wednesday wellness calls that happen the 1st and 3rd Wednesday of every month for members of the channel. I'm going to let you know I have an event coming up on Saturday, September 9th. It is a journal and sip workshop. So many of you might have heard of a paint and sip, where you sip wine and you paint. Well, we're having a journal and sip workshop on Zoom. And so I'm not advocating that you sip wine. Whatever you sip is your business. I'm going to be sipping some coffee or tea or lemonade. Whatever's in your glass is your business. And so we're going to do a journal and sip, and we're going to be working from my journal, which is a self-love journal, because you're worth it. So it's a self-love journaling workshop focusing on godly self-love. So for those of you who are interested, please look for the flyer. I will have it up sometime this week. It is a private paid-for event, so you'll see all the information on the flyer for those who are interested in getting tickets. It's a ticketed event for this event coming up. And I also want to let you know about Speaking Life into Your I Am. That is a book of Bible-based affirmations that really focuses on who you are in God. And one of the things that has helped me to really be clear about my yes and my no is knowing who I am in God, and that I'm not put on earth to be a people pleaser. I'm not put on earth to run myself ragged in the ground, trying to be all things to all people. And so when we know who we are in God, we are not easily manipulated. We are not easily taken advantage of. We are not easily deceived or gaslighted. And so speaking life into your I am really begins to help us look at the scriptures that speak to who we are in God. And so if you struggle with confidence, if you struggle with self-esteem, pick up the book, Speaking Life into Your I Am. And it's not a book that's meant to be read one time. It's a book that's meant to be read over and over again whenever you need it. You keep it in your spiritual warfare toolbox. So with that being said, if you feel that this channel has been a blessing to you, if you feel that the ministry is a blessing to you, please consider sowing a seed into the ministry. We are so thankful for those of you who sow into our ministry, who partner with us. Very thankful for those of you who are members of the YouTube channel. So I just want to say a thank you to all of you. So have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you all soon.